Today, we recap the Guardian series, discuss the State of the Union with Noah Hiles, see what's happening down on the farm, and preview the upcoming series in Chicago against the Cubs. You're listening to the Bucco Bantr podcast, brought to you by the Just Baseball Media Network. Cue the music.
Rockin' 101, she compliment my taste. Whiskey in my lemonade, cause I like the way it tastes. Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates. Order steak by the plates, and then case after case. Run my race at my pace, clear the grass of the snakes.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Bucco Bantr. I am riding solo this week for the end of weekend recap without my co-host Adam Shore. He is in Europe, and we are joined today by Noah Hiles. He'll be joining us here shortly. But a tough week at home against the Cubs, and then in Cleveland against the Guardians. We'll get into a quick recap of those games here shortly. We'll also discuss what's happening down on the farm and then preview the upcoming series in Chicago. We play the Cubs again at Wrigley starting Monday. We're recording on a Sunday, so tomorrow. And then we'll give you our players of the week as always. But first, some things happening within the organization. Our weekly recap, if you will. Andrew McCutchen was reinstated from the 10-day IL. He returned scorching hot. Had a couple big hits here in Cleveland. Unfortunately, they weren't enough this weekend. Ben Heller was placed on the 15-day IL. And then Dalton Jeffries began a rehab assignment with AAA. May see him, may not, with rosters expanding here. We just also got back Colin Holderman and Ryan Barucki. They are additions due to the rosters expanding here as of September 1st. Their rehab assignments ended. Ryan Barucki hasn't pitched since April 5th. He's obviously had some time down in the minors and Altoona and in Indy, but he's finally made his way back to Pittsburgh. So good to see him back in the pen. It's good to see Colin Holderman back, who apparently has been dealing with a wrist injury all year. So both are reinstated from the IL. They are on the active roster. Good to see them back. We're just going to dive right into it. Not much. I can't banter with myself, unfortunately. I usually sit here and banter with Adam, talk about our weeks, and talk about what's happening within the organization. But we're going to do that with Noah after we recap the Guardian series. So let's dive into it. All righty, let's dive into the Friday game in Cleveland, 10-8. Suffered the loss. Bailey Falter was on the hill. 4 innings pitched, 7 hits, 4 earned runs, 1 walk, and 2 Ks. His ERA is at 4.41. Carl Mlodzinski, not his best outing. An inning pitched, 4 hits, 4 earned runs, 2 Ks. Gave up 2 homers, 3.89 ERA now. We'll talk about the bullpen and the struggles with Noah here after this recap, but definitely a concern. Domingo Germán went 3 innings, 5 hits, 2 earned runs, 1 walk, and 4 Ks. His ERA sits at 6.11 as of this outing. Rowdy Tellez had a big week, actually. He was 8 for 17 this week, 2 for 3 with a home run, his 12th of the year, 2 RBIs. He's at 257. If you told me before the season that we were going to bring in Rowdy Tellez and he was going to hit around 260, I would have laughed in your face probably, because Rowdy Tellez is like a career 220, 230 hitter. Strikes out a lot, and we saw that at the beginning of the season. There were people calling for his head, and he quickly turned it around. Good to see his resurgence. Kutch, 2 for 5 with a double and a home run, his 17th on the year, 3 RBIs. He sits at 238 as of this game. Brian Reynolds and O'Neill Cruz each collected 2 hits. Cruz had 3 RBIs. Cruz just keeps hitting. The month of August, I think he's had a 3.89 ERA, the best in the league. And that's, wow, changing positions. I mean, that was just recently, but still, that's a big change for him. And I think that's something that we're all going to be watching here for the last week or so of the season. 12 hits total, 5 for 9 with runners in scoring position, 8 left on base, 6 Ks. Let's go into Saturday. 3-0 win. We saw a win. We're back in the win column. Luis Ortiz looked stellar. 6 innings pitched, only 1 hit, no runs, 3 walks, 5 Ks. CRA sits at 3.19. He's had a very solid year after starting as a long man in the bullpen. Gotta love what you've seen from Ortiz this year. His counterpart, Matthew Boyd, who we recapped in the last episode with Adam Zinko, he generated 18 swings and misses. Not a guy that you think of as a whiff generator, if you will. But man, he works that 92-mile-an-hour fastball with right up in the zone, and he's got a nasty sweeper. He's got a funky lefty, and he's kind of a career journey, not a journeyman, but he's been hurt. He's coming back from the dead, if you will, and Cleveland, leave it to Cleveland to resurrect a guy like Matthew Boyd. Jalen Beeks threw a third of an inning, 1 hit, 1 walk. And Dennis Santana, 1 2/3, 2 Ks. He's been a guy who's been solid. He's been one of the more reliable bullpen guys here, I feel like, down the stretch. So shout out Dennis Santana. And Aroldis Chapman, he earned his 5th save of the season. This comes after the demotion for David Bednar. He is now the 9th inning. Well, they didn't, I guess, necessarily anoint Chapman the 9th inning closer, but they said it was going to be a closer by committee. You got to think that Chapman's going to get most of those save opportunities. But nonetheless, 1 inning, 2 Ks, 3.48 ERA. Chapman looked great. Nicky G, 3 for 4 with a double. He's at 266 on the year. Cruz stayed hot, went 2 for 3. Triolo, IKF, and Reynolds all stole bags in this game. Actually, IKF had 2. It's rare you see 4 stolen bases for the Pirates in one game. Gotta love that. 9 hits total, 3 for 11 with runners in scoring position, 9 left on base, and 11 strikeouts. Let's go into today's game quickly. We got the Guardians 6-1. Another L for the Pirates. They lose the series. Unfortunately, Mitch Keller was not fooling anybody today. 5 1/3, 11 hits. 11 hits. 3 earned runs, no walks, 7 Ks. 3 earned runs came off of 3 homers by Jimenez, 2 by Kyle Manzardo. Got to be happy there was only 3 earned runs because it just felt like everyone was hitting him. He wasn't fooling anybody. He did have 7 Ks though, and no walks. He has a 3.88 ERA. He generated 13 whiffs, which was more than I was expecting to see after that outing, but because it seemed like he wasn't fooling anybody. But yeah, not his best. Alex Cobb actually probably had his best outing of the year. He carried perfection into the 7th inning. He was just beating us to death with bowling ball sinkers, just heavy sinkers down the bottom of the zone, and we were just beating them into the ground. I saw so many ground balls in those first 5 to 6 innings. It was getting tiring watching it, not gonna lie. But yeah, Alex Cobb looked good today. Ryan Barucki went an inning, 1 hit, 2 earned runs off of a homer, 1 walk. Kyle Nicholas went 2/3 of an inning, 1 hit, 1 walk. And David Bednar came in at the end through an inning, 1 walk. No runs, though. IKF and Reynolds had the only hits of the game, 2 singles, only 2 hits for the team. Cruz had his 20th stolen base of the season, which was cool to see. 0 for 4 with runners in scoring position, 3 left on base, and 10 strikeouts. Tough series in Cleveland. This is an organization that Pirates fans should be looking at and maybe be jealous of. I mean, there's no reason why we can't be Cleveland. There's no reason why the Pirates can't operate in the same fashion. I've always been envious of how they run their organization. I think they're a model organization from almost top to bottom, for small markets at least. So let's dive into that more with Noah Hiles here. All right, we now welcome onto the pod reoccurring guest and your Pirates beat reporter for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Noah Hiles. No, this is like your 4th time on Bucco Bantr. You're far ahead of everybody. Welcome back.
I'm glad to be back. Run up the score. I was going to say I have an honorary Bucco Bantr hat. I was thinking about bringing it, but I am going from Cleveland to Chicago tomorrow morning. Oh, and nice. I don't like to travel with like hats that I actually value when I'm traveling, because if I put them in my backpack, they might get.
No, you're kissing up. I love it. Like hats you actually value. I love that.
Ask my girlfriend. I wear it around the house all the time.
I love that.
Yes, I'm a big hat guy when I'm at home, and nice. It's always on. So
nice.
A lot of pride in being a Bucco Bantr's #1 guest.
Yeah, you're our guy. I mean, this is your 4th time on already. I'm sure we'll have you on again soon. I'm going to be out of the country starting next week, actually a week from today. So me and Shore kind of swap places. He's coming back tonight, I believe. So I'm sure he'll reach out to you or you, Destin, or Stumpf. Who knows? And then we got the off season, but we got to take a break. I know if I know you as well as I think I do, I think both of us are really looking forward to watching the championship season of the New York Knicks.
Yes,
Itching
very
to
much
watch that.
so. I'm just excited for this season to be over. That's not to say for the people who are watching or listening, I'm still working hard, still doing my best to do my job. But boy, oh boy,
it's a long season, man. It's a long season. I guess we'll lead right into it. The season has been up and down. I think for a while they exceeded my expectations, even though if you look at a stat sheet, it didn't look pretty ever. Right. So, we talked about it the last time you were on. I think if they had won half of those one-run games that they lost, they'd be like 14, 15 games above 500. I think this was like at the All-Star break. But any takeaways, if any, from this series in Cleveland?
Yeah, I think the biggest story that came from it was David Bednar's demotion. I think that's the big thing that we wanted to see because, I didn't know if this guy was going to get demoted or shut down, I should say. So the fact that they take him out of that closer role, and just you look at how the bullpen has been, Scott. It had the highest ERA in baseball over the last month. It's led all of Major League Baseball with 9 losses. It was in the bottom top 10 in pretty much every notable statistical category that you want to evaluate bullpens. I think the final month of the season should just be let your starter go through the order twice. And whenever that's it, pull the guy. Because wins and losses at this point, they don't matter.
No.
You got to figure out this bullpen stuff. And I think Cleveland was further evidence of that. You've got to get Barucki right. You've got to get Holderman right. Who both returned to the team Sunday. You've got to get Bednar right. Majinski did not look good in his outing.
Yeah, the last 2, I believe.
Struggled. Yeah. So, there's just guy after guy. It's injury related or they're in a slump or whatever. You got to feel good with the starting pitching, even with August happening and them not being great. Heading into next year, you feel good about that group. The lineup, we know the weaknesses there, right? Like, you know what you have with Cruz at the plate and Reynolds and all these other guys. But the bullpen this last month, I'm sorry to go on this long-winded answer.
Please.
To me, my big takeaway from this Cleveland series and heading into September is you got to figure out how much money you're going to have to spend to fix this problem in the offseason, because there's not a lot of other places on this team where you're going to be able to really make a financial impact. You can go get a first baseman, but they're not going to spend good first baseman money. And the same could be said for really any significant player or position player. But with the money they spent on starting pitching last year, you could spend that on bullpen help and make your team significantly better. You just need to figure out, is it 2 guys you got to get back? Is it 3 or 2 guys that you need to bring in? Is it 3? Is it Chapman coming back and then you use the Perez money or the Gonzalez money? That's the big storyline to me. That was my big takeaway watching this series in Cleveland was they've got to figure out what this bullpen is going to look like in 2025.
So a lot of things to talk about from that. I think bullpen-wise, I want to talk about Bednar, but before that, coming into the season, I thought that the pen was going to be the strength. I think a lot of people did, right?
Same.
The starting rotation was up in the air, and starting rotation's been, it's had its ups and downs, as does every rotation with injuries and whatnot. But for the most part, you see light at the end of the tunnel. You see promise with these guys, or at least the core of this rotation. This bullpen, though, do you think part of it, at least recently, is a matter of them being taxed? Nicholas has been really good down the stretch. Majinski just came back from the IL, but we've gone through these game recaps week after week after week, and I was like, wow, Nicholas was used every day almost. Yep. So part of that plays a role in it, right? Because you're not going to be perfect all year. We saw that with Holderman. He had a 0.6 ERA going into Memorial Day, and then he had a string of bad outings after that. That's going to happen, but how much of that is the bullpen not being good enough or deep enough, and also them being taxed.
That's what's funny is, Charrington, I remember in the beginning of the season talked about how much more depth this team had. And I think that comment really came back to bite him in an area where he didn't expect it to. I think that he didn't think there was a lot, or at least a lot of people didn't think they had enough starting pitching depth. And in a way they didn't, because they had to rely on Woodford and Domingo Herman and whoever else this past month. But that's because they traded guys away. But this bullpen, I think injuries set them up. Their spring training, if you go back and look at it, it's kind of nuts with everything that happened to almost everyone. Bednar went down with an injury in spring training. Holderman got that virus. Dari Murrieta, who was one of their reliable guys, goes down out for the season.
Yeah.
There was a
Bucco hasn't played all year.
Bucco goes down in April and hasn't played all year. First outing since April 5th today. Carmen Majinski. That's half your bullpen that they projected going into this year is out. And so I think next year you got to look at, sure, you still probably feel good with bringing back Bednar, Holderman, Nicholas, Majinski, Santana, but just that group is not enough. You have to assume that all five of those guys, you have to assume that, okay, we've got 7 guys returning or whatever. 5 of them are going to go through at least 1 3-week stretch where they're either awful or they are injured. So you need to have double that ready and waiting. And there have been times this year, Scott, where there was no one to call up in AAA besides Ben Heller, Brady Fiegel.
Ryder Ryan, whenever you need him.
Ryder Ryan is just snip, snap, and that's where, sure, and it's not to say that guys like who have been the up and down guys position player wise, the G1 Bays, the whoever else, the Alika Williamses have been good, but they have not hurt your team the way the bullpen has. Because in past years when this team was competitive, or if you just look at other teams, you just need replacement level players ready and waiting. And they don't have that. If they're at full strength and they're all healthy and rested, this is a good bullpen. But the problem is there's only really been 1 month where that's been the case. And it was July, which was their best month of the season. That's when everyone was rested and firing on all cylinders. And that's when they played their best baseball. But once injuries start and once your starting rotation hiccups for the first time of the year and you have to cover, it all falls apart. So that's a concern. That's a concern. And to go, sorry to go. But to answer, I felt like I ignored the one part was I do feel like they were taxed. And I think that something that we go back to is there were a lot of games in May and in June where this team would either win or lose 1-0, 2-1, 3-2. And I remember John Wayner saying this on a radio broadcast one time. He said, eventually this team's going to have to start winning 5-0, 6-1, 7-1. So you don't have to use David Bednar in high leverage every single time he pitches. It's nice to get a guy just, hey, it's 5-0. You haven't pitched in 4 days. Get out there. They don't really have those opportunities often with these guys. And when you're using your premier arms in this reserve unit, they're coming in very high leverage situations. And
like
I do
every
think
time
tax on them. And then when you get a guy like Holderman, who said today he's been dealing with his wrist thing all season. And when you know that, think of how much weight that Holderman put on his back in April through July, really. And so he just knows, he's like, I can't go down. This team cannot afford for me to get hurt. And he goes out there, he pitches, and he gets shelled. And he has the worst week anyone could imagine.
Yeah.
And the season's pretty much over because of it. You got to get more depth to that spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I think, too, the big theme here across the organization, not just in the bullpen, but depth at the upper level. Like, obviously, they have starting pitchers at every level. But, how many prospects are they calling up? They're not calling up Harrington and Chandler this year. bats, bullpen, like they've really struggled with that upper level depth, and that's why personally I was a fan of the Quinn Priester trade,
Yeah.
the Patrick Riley trade. They dealt from depth, and they were able to get some upper level guys, but they need a lot more. Speaking of Majinski and Holderman and Brucky got called up today. Are there corresponding moves, or are those like expanded roster moves?
Those are expanded roster moves.
That's what
and
I figured.
They had 2 open spots on the 40-man. Barucki coming back takes one of those away. So they have 39 guys on their 40-man roster.
Got it. I want to talk about Bednar a little bit too, because this is something that we've been talking about ad nauseum, and want to get your thoughts on this. So, at the beginning of the season, he went through his struggles. We all talked about how he wasn't ramped up in spring training, and he had a tough couple first series, and especially the Detroit Tigers series at home. Like, that was tough to watch. I'm in the line of thinking that, first of all guys are different. Like, there's no cookie cutter approach to coaching, to handling different guys. Like, every guy is different how they handle situations. Continuing to throw a guy out there in high leverage, I think, could possibly do more damage. Not for everybody, but it possibly could. And then we had the news today. I think I saw you tweeted out the other day about how they're demoting him. He's no longer going to be in the high leverage relief roles. Too little, too late. Like, shouldn't they have done this like May, June when he was struggling?
Yeah, but I guess my question would be, who else were they going to give those innings to? Yeah. I mean, you could maybe say Dennis Santana, right? Like, and I'm just saying, like, if you're truly going to take him out of high leverage, because the easy answer, if you're looking at it just a black and white issue, it's pitch Chapman in the 9th. Sure, that makes sense. Chapman was the best. Chapman has been the best relief pitcher on this team in 2024. Yeah. For as much as people complain about how much money he gets paid, that guy ended up being worth maybe not $10 million for this team, but that was a $10 million for an actual baseball team that pays people actual real money. That's the type of performance you typically get. So he should have been your 9th inning guy, but is the 8th inning not high leverage? And then you have that in the back of your head where, okay, well, I'm not good enough for the 9th, and I'm going out there. And I mean, look at some of the times through the order that Chapman would face compared to Bednar or Holderman even. I mean, Chapman is more often than not going up against the heart of the order. It feels like every time. So what's the difference there? It's more, you can't demote him because you don't have anyone else to give those innings to. Like you said, I mean, Nicholas, who I thought looked really good for most of this season, is still really young. And in a series where your starters, say that stretch where they got rain delayed, like 2 out of 3 games against the Padres, that really messed them up. Nicholas is going to be one of those guys where you need to cover multiple innings. And so are you going to ask Bednar to do that instead? Like, what roles are you flip-flopping here? Because sure, ask like Chapman into the 9th makes sense, but where do you put Bednar? And whose role is he swapping? Is it Holderman? Because that wouldn't have worked either if we're playing the hindsight game. Is it Santana? Because, I mean, that's a bit of a gamble, right? Like, that guy who had 1 good month of Major League Baseball for a 2-time All-Star. Is it Nicholas, a rookie? Is it Milczynski, who's hurt? Like, they just the correct answer is they just didn't have the depth. They couldn't make the move. And that's Shelton. I don't know what's going to happen with him at the end of this season, but it's things like that where they seem obvious, but it's what else do you want him to do? Put an inferior, less proven product out there? I mean, maybe try it once, but I don't know if it's concrete enough to be like, oh, this was absolutely the thing you should have done. I just don't know.
I mean, this is where the depth comes into play, right? Like, they just don't have it. And an example I brought up on previous episodes was Paul Sewald for Arizona. Paul Sewald was struggling, and they immediately went to committee. But they have the ability, like Justin Martinez has kind of come not out of nowhere, but he's risen this year, and he's a freak. I mean, they have the depth that they can do a committee and like mix and match guys. And I know Shelton likes to play matchups, but does he have the ability to play matchups with this bullpen?
No, not right now. I mean, their matchups is righty lefty.
Yeah.
Like that's and like I know they go deeper than that. I'm not undermining them in that sense, but it's like a lot of it is just it's that. Like very rarely do you hear him in the game saying like, yeah, we like how this pitch matched up against that or something like that. And it's righty lefty. And yeah, they just don't have that. That's what you pointed out. The Guardians could do that too. Say Clase, who can't see really a world where this happens. Say Clase does slump and blows multiple saves. Like the dudes that they have 6th through 8th can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to go off on my little side tangent here. Watching the Cleveland Guardians should be the most frustrating thing in the world for a Pittsburgh Pirates.
I've said this. Yep.
Because they have every resource that the Pirates do. They have an owner that's not typically known for spending money. They have a ballpark that has the same seating capacity in an area that has worse weather than Pittsburgh. They're also in a division of similar competence where, not going to run into anybody that serious. But their formula works. You develop pitching, you build a ton of depth, and you have 2 to 3 good hitters. And in the 10 years of a decade, Scott, that team in 7 of those 10 is a legitimate playoff contender. In 2 of those 7 years, they're a legitimate World Series contender. Do they get there all the time? No. But you look at that team, and it's like, why in the world could that not be the Pirates? And it's not because of Bob Nutting. But Nutting makes it tough, but the ceiling under Nutting is 98 wins. That is proven.
Yeah.
So far. And 98 wins would absolutely run away. That would be probably the highest win total in baseball this year. So
easily.
It's the people that Nutting hired. They are not as good right now as the Guardians. You could compare the owners all you want, and I know that Nutting's the easy guy, but it's their scouts are better. Their coaches are better. Their general manager and front office is better. They develop and find talent better. And when you're a small market team, you can have your ups and downs, but you look, everyone likes to look at the Rays who are, they're the mad scientists of the bunch. Cleveland isn't that, what's the word? Fancy about it, unique about it. It's simple and it works. And that's where, if you're a Pirates fan, seeing that team should piss you off because that is so attainable for the Pirates. It just comes down to having the right people making the decisions.
I'm so happy you said that because I've been saying that for years. And I, being from Pittsburgh, like I tend to hate Cleveland teams, but I've always loved the Guardians or the Indians. Same. Like I just respect how they do business, and I've always said that there's no reason why the Pirates can't beat Cleveland or Tampa, whoever you want to compare them to. I don't care. But I would think
Tampa's a little different because, like, Tampa, you have to have a specialty. Like, they do things different than everyone else. Yeah. But the Guardians don't. The Guardians, this Guardians team is not that different than the Pirates' best case scenario, right? They have 3 amazing hitters. Reynolds could be your Jose Ramirez. O'Neill could be your Naylor. They have a power bat. They have an all-around excellent hitter, and then they have an average hitter, like a batting average.
Stephen Kwan, I love Stephen Kwan.
Right. Yeah. Like, those could be your 3 guys. Like, the Pirates are 1 player away from having that, and then they just have guys who are good enough. Yeah. Austin Hedges, is good enough here. That's the barometer. This team's good enough to win with Austin Hedges. The other team isn't.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. I'm looking at the Rays. Like, for example, I know they do a lot of things differently, but they have this constant 40-man crunch where they're just churning guys through. And then guys like Neander, the GM there, always tells guys, he's upfront with them, like, hey, you're probably going to be here a couple of years, or he's really upfront with them when he's about to move them, or if he's thinking about talking to other teams about them. And then they got the next man up coming up through AAA. Like, we don't have that here. We don't have the bats ready to come up from Indianapolis. We don't have, we have the arms, but it just feels like they draft well. They sign an international market well. So is Cleveland's known for the international market. And we can also touch on that because the Pirates just got rid of Junior Vizcaino, who I believe only major league signing is Luis Ortiz. Is that correct?
Yes. I know that, that's like that academy or whatever. That's all they produce. So
yeah, let's go there because I think player development as a whole, outside of the pitching, has been down for quite some time, even before Charrington came through the organization. I think player development is somewhere where they've lacked. The international market, like I was trying to think of some guys that they have brought up through the international market. I couldn't think of many. Like Luis Ortiz is an outsider. Like some guys that they've signed, like Shailene Polanco down in Bradenton, he's struggling this year. He's hitting like 160.
Yep.
I mean, there's Omar Alfonso, Oxio Plaz. They've shown signs.
They're like 19 years old.
They're 19, right? So like, it's crazy how little they've done in the international market compared to other teams, especially like a Cleveland or a Tampa. I mean, is that somewhere that they can, since making this move, not renewing this contract, is that somewhere where they're going to focus more going forward?
That's where they need to get better.
Yeah.
It's similar to, promoting Justin Meese to be their amateur scouting director. I mean, they've got to get new people, or not Justin Meese, Justin Horowitz. Yeah. Meese.
I was going to say, Justin Meese is a pitcher, right?
Yeah. It's if a guy pitching for the Altoona Curve is also, that's a conflict of interest. But these are the moves you have to make. And I'm not saying Horowitz is the right guy. I mean, we'll know later on, but I mean, this was like his first draft. But yeah, like these are the areas where it's easier to be the GM of the Dodgers or the Yankees, where you can make a Carl Crawford type of mistake if you're Boston, or you can make these like huge financial miscalculations and live to tell the tale. In Pittsburgh, you don't even have the resources to do that. Yeah. So in order to be great internally, you have to be better than them in the front office. You have to be better than them in scouting. You have to find, and it might be a case where, sure, like the Rays, think of how many people in that Rays front office in the last 2 decades have been poached by other teams. That's okay. That means you're doing something well.
That's a good thing, yep.
If you're running a business and people want to hire your employees, that means you have a good business.
It's like the Sean McVay coaching tree.
Right. I mean, Sean McVay, there's just a million examples of like, or the inverse would be the Mike Tomlin coaching tree, right? Like there's just, if people don't want anything to do, if your employees aren't being poached and they don't have opportunities to get raises or whatever, more often than not, it means you're not good enough.
Yeah.
And how often do we see the Pirates front office guys getting snagged up? People who are young, people who are in these roles that aren't talked about every day, going and getting new jobs, becoming the next guy at the next place. It's very rare. That's what they need. And they've got to get those hires right, because the Rays don't get it right every time. They whiff in the draft. They whiff on trades. But guess what? When you are hitting more than you're missing, you still have things to fall back on. For the Pirates, it seems like these guys get 1 right out of every 10. And when that one gets in trouble or
it's not enough for
injured,
the window that they have. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And speaking of, personnel, not going to go too in depth here. Don't like to talk about someone else's job, but Derek Shelton, how hot is his seat right now, would you say?
Yeah, I don't know. I would say it's pretty hot. Like, it would make sense. I want to say, like, it's not all his fault. Are there things that he does not do well? Absolutely. And we could do a whole show on that. But a lot of this stuff is on the guys who construct the team, right? And like the offseason Ben Cherington had set Derek Shelton up in a very tough spot.
Yeah.
But also Derek Shelton has his own flaws. Sticking with people, players or coaches, even though it's proven not to work. And sometimes that might not be in his hands either. But at the end of the day, in this business that they are in, your job is to win with what you have to work with.
Yep.
And if this guy can't put together a winning team with Ben Cherington's players, then you got to find someone else who can.
Yep.
It's the same argument you can make with, The same argument to bring him back up again. It's Steelers season, baby. With the Tomlin thing, some of Tomlin's biggest defenders will say, "Oh, it's because Rooney's son isn't as good of an owner as the old man, right? And he doesn't give all those resources." It's like, okay, well, guess what? That owner's not going anywhere. So you need to maybe find someone who can win under these circumstances. And that change is gonna be made before the general manager. You might fire them together. I don't think that's gonna happen, simply because there are wins to point out with Cherington. There are way more losses, but there are wins. But with Shelton, I don't know what you can really hang your hat on. I mean, they try their best. Every post-game presser now, it feels like there's always one opportunity where they can say, that's a win for our coaching staff. That's the rhetoric of a staff that knows it's in trouble.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, the manager is going to go before the GM.
Right.
You see a lot of GMs come in. Maybe Miami's not a perfect team to compare to, but I mean, whenever a GM comes in, they historically like their own team. They like their own people, own guys. And we're like right now in a window and obviously Skeens isn't going anywhere until he has to, but like we've got Skeens, Jones, like we have a young core to build around, and you just extended Brian Reynolds. Brian Hayes is another story, but still, like, you have a young core to build around. And so it feels like Shelton's seat is really hot from an outsider's perspective.
Right.
I personally like Shelton a lot. I think given a team that maybe spends a little bit more money, this was his first managerial job, I think he does a much better job. And I think he's been dealt a bad hand every year he's been here. But again, there is some blame to fall on him. You've got to get the most out of your guys or the roster that you're given. And that's why I think maybe a long-term experienced manager, we might be thinking the same guy, would be a perfect fit for an organization like this.
Yeah. And it's tough too when you have a rookie manager with a team full of pre-arb guys. Yeah. I was having this conversation with a player on the team who I won't throw his name out. But he was talking about how it's difficult when you look around a team that's trying to compete, trying to play meaningful baseball, when this is the first time that a lot of the people who are a part of it, it's a foreign experience too in this current role. You might have been a role player on a really good team, but were you an everyday player on a team that's played meaningful baseball? You might have been a coach on a staff that went to a World Series or had a deep playoff run or won a division, but you weren't the manager. Right. You weren't the pitching coach. You weren't the hitting coach. Or if you were the hitting coach, you had different players. It's just different things. And so it's tough. And I think, like what you said, if Shelton had a team full of older guys, it's a little easier. But this is a tough job. You need someone who's done this before, who can bring that kind of credibility. And I don't think Shelton is nearly as bad as a lot of people think, but this might not be the guy for this specific challenge. Based off of what this team needs. This team needs a little bit more accountability. This team needs a little bit more of, I've done this. Shut up and just do it this way. Not trust me. And it's
trust the process.
That's what you trust. Look, this ring, I won this. Look, I have a winning record as a manager.
I mean, that's what Clint Hurdle brought. Clint Hurdle was like, look, I did it in Colorado. I can do it.
Right.
Anyway.
Like 4 years prior to being hired.
Yeah.
Like most of the guys on his team were playing professional baseball when he was in the World Series. Some of them weren't in the major leagues, but like when Hurdle was hired in 2011, 4 years prior, that guy was playing for a world championship. And having that, saying, look, I get this modern game and I get how to do it here. That's important, and that's not in Shelton's control. Like I said, a lot of Shelton's shortcomings come with the cards that he's been dealt. But at the same time, there's probably people out there who can play his hand better than he can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure the talks will increase once the season ends here in a month. But we're at the half-hour mark now. I got two questions for you that I want to run by you real quick before we call it a day here. First, did you see I think you posted it. Did you see the comment that Cherington made about Henry Davis's move to the outfield last year?
So I was actually writing during the Charrington show, but I am familiar with it. Yes. How he kind of regrets it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting, right? I
Isn't
mean,
that funny?
you don't
What
see too
about
many
it?
comments like that from a GM. It's just crazy that, I mean, I think we all maybe saw that or like thought it was a bad idea, but like it's not often that you see a GM come out and say like, yeah, I messed up, like publicly, at least from what I've seen.
I mean, it's kind of new, right? That is one thing that I think is a major flaw, and I think that, quite frankly, pisses off a lot of Pirates fans with this front office and this coaching staff is the inability to admit that something's wrong, that something didn't go well. It's we still think this was the right move. This just didn't happen. Where they could say this just didn't work. And there's been a lot of accountability, I think, in this last week with that comment from Charrington, with giving up on Cruz at shortstop, with benching Bednar. Maybe they have had to look in the mirror a little bit and say,
that's what it seems like. Yeah.
we're not always right all the time, as it turns out. Which is interesting. I don't know if you're doing that to save face. I don't know if you're doing that because your owner believes in you still and you say, hey, we miscalculated. We figured it out now. Let us make these tweaks and we're good to go.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with this. It seems like there has been some self-reflection amongst the front office and the staff there, which leads me to my very last question too. O'Neill Cruz to center field. My initial thoughts were I was surprised it was happening when it was happening. But then I've warmed up to it. I think it could be really good for his career long term. And I think if you're going to make such a move, get these reps in now before, your real contention window starts maybe next year. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, short term, I like the move a lot. I don't have high expectations for him defensively at that position. Like, he's played 3 games there now. There haven't been any huge mistakes. I'm sure there will be. Like,
he had that one error, the throw to Grendel, which I didn't even think was that.
That was not on him at all. Like, that's just we could do a whole nother show on that subject. But no, I mean, I thought he's been fine. I'm sure he's going to make mistakes. The short term, I think the move makes a lot of sense. Get him game reps. If you recognize that he's not a big league shortstop, then change his position. There is value there. He is fast. He can cover a lot of ground. He does have one of the best arms in the game. Check off those boxes. Long term, there are additional steps that need to be taken place here. Brian Reynolds cannot be this guy's left fielder if this is going to be your center fielder on opening day next year. I look at that as saying, okay, well, if you're going to have a guy who, I don't know how many games are left this season, like 28 or something. Let's say he starts every single one of them. He's still going into the regular season next year, assuming he's the everyday center fielder on opening day with less than 50 games played at that spot. So you need a defensive guarantee next to him. And at the ballpark that he plays in, it's more important to have a better defensive left fielder than a center fielder.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I mean, Kutch was a good defensive player early in his career, but Marte saved that guy's ass a lot in the back end of his first time in Pittsburgh. And it does not get recognized like it should. Corey Dickerson made a lot of other center fielders a lot better when he was there. And when the Pirates do not have a good defensive left fielder, because it has an impact on the center fielder's defensive metrics tenfold. So I look at a guy like Tyler O'Neill or someone like that who will be on the free agent market. Ooh. Maybe that's your move. Or maybe you trade someone for
move Reynolds to right.
Move Reynolds to designated hitter. Move Reynolds to first base. I mean, that's a theory that's been thrown out, and I haven't heard anyone within the organization even remotely consider that as an option. But I look at the designated hitter thing as, hey, Brian, we're going to let you do what you do best, buddy. Go up there with that bat and you freaking whack it, brother. And every now and then you could still play Reynolds in the outfield. You're going to play once a week in the outfield. And the other 5 games you play that week, you're going to be the designated hitter. That's something that makes your team better in multiples. If you can get a replacement level hitter who can play great defense in left field, put Reynolds, that goes in the McCutchen part of the equation, which is another topic. But long term, I think that's what you do here with O'Neill. This is a move that involves more than just the individual it's centered around. You need to surround him. And based off of what you have in right field projected to be your long-term future, be it Brian De La Cruz or Sawinski, not getting a lot of defensive help out of that duo. So you need to find someone in left field, especially in the ballpark you play in, to be very good defensively in that spot. That should be a big priority for them in the offseason. They have to figure out what they're doing with Brian Reynolds now, too.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't even think about that. I'm really concerned about the corners, especially with the acquisition of Brian De La Cruz, because you could also argue that he's a DH. So, and he's got he's something. He's got 3 years of control left. So, yep. It's scary, man. And I think with O'Neal Cruz at shortstop, like there wasn't a precedent for a 6'8" shortstop, but there is somewhat of a precedent for a 6'8" center fielder. I'm not comparing him to Aaron Judge, but like there is the study out there or a case.
It's staring us right in the face every night on ESPN.
Yeah, exactly. But Noah, as always, really appreciate you coming on, man, and taking the time up in Cleveland to talk some Buccos here in this last month. I'm sure we'll have you on again soon for the off season or when I'm out. So as always, appreciate it. And we'll talk soon.
All right. Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Noah. All right. Welcome back. That was a fun conversation with Noah. We could have gone on for hours there. As always, Noah is a recurring guest. It was his fourth time on Bucco Bantr. Looking forward to having him on again soon, especially in the off season. But now let's get into down on the farm. Let's see what's happening down in the affiliates. As always, we'll start with Indianapolis. They were at home this week against Louisville, the Reds affiliate, Louisville Bats. The Indianapolis Indians are now above 500 as of today. They're 65 and 64. I feel like just a month ago, they were like more than 10 games under 500. So quick turnaround after a couple acquisitions. Not that we really care about minor league records, but it is quite the turnaround as we've been following this team so closely all year. Nick York this week went 8 for 27. 5 RBIs, 3 doubles, a home run, 2 walks, 5 Ks, and a stolen base. He's at 328 on the year. And Billy Cook, not his best week, but he had a good game today. 4 for 23, 5 RBIs, a home run, 3 walks, 11 Ks, and a stolen base. He's at 280 on the year. On Tuesday, Mike Burrows went 4 innings, 3 hits, no earned, 1 walk, 5 Ks, 3.27 ERA on the season after this one. A lot of arms at the AAA level, a lot of arms that we're excited to see next year. This is going to be a topic of discussion this offseason. Starting pitching is not the issue, man. We don't have to worry about starting pitching for a while with these guys that are coming up. Wednesday, game 1, Bubba Chandler went 5 innings, 3 hits, no earned runs, 2 walks, 5 Ks. His ERA is at 1.17 since joining the Indianapolis Indians. Isaac Madsen finished out the game, 2 innings, no hits, 4 Ks. He's been pretty stellar out of the bullpen for AAA this year. And Peggy hit his 13th home run of the season. He's hitting 252. In game 2 on Wednesday, this was a makeup of a game from July 3rd. Colin Holderman threw an inning, 1 hit, 1 K before we rejoined the Pirates in Cleveland. Thursday, Thomas Harrington went 5 innings, pitched 7 hits, 4 earned runs, 1 walk, 7 Ks. He's got 3.81 ERA since joining AAA. Ryan Borucki went 1 inning, no hits, 1 K. Matt Gorski, 4 for 4, double, a home run, his 20th on the year, 4 RBIs, 255 on the season. Big game for Matt Gorski, the local kid there in Indianapolis. Friday, Braxton Ashcraft, 1 inning, 1 hit, no earned run, 1 K. He's got a .47 ERA in AAA. And unfortunately, we heard the news that he's being sidelined again. Forearm issues, never want to hear forearm. He just came back from injury. It seems like injuries have plagued his career so far. So keeping our fingers crossed, hoping the best for Braxton Ashcraft. He's one of the most promising arms in this organization. But don't expect to see him throw the rest of the year. I mean, these games only go till about September 20th, so we got a couple more weeks of AAA games. Colin Holderman also threw in his game, threw an inning and no hits, 3 Ks. Saturday, Luis Cessa went 5 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned, 2 walks, 8 Ks. And then today, Nicky York and Billy Cook, the 2 trade deadline acquisitions. Nick York went 3 for 5 with his first home run since joining the Pirates, his 7th on the year, 2 RBIs, and Billy Cook went yard, his 14th of the year. That brings us to Altoona, who is also home this week against the New Hampshire Fisher Cats, the Blue Jays AA affiliate. Tamar Johnson, 2 for 17 in his first week as a Altoona Curve. 3 runs scored, 2 RBIs, a home run, his first in AA. 5 walks, 5 Ks, and a stolen base. Is at 118 in such a small sample size. On Tuesday, he debuted. He batted second, went over 2 walks, and a stolen base. And then on Wednesday, his second game in Altoona, that's when he hit his first AA homer. 2 RBIs that game. Thursday, Dominic Parachi took the mound. He's also a guy that came up from Greensboro. He went 5 2/3, gave up 6 hits, 4 earned runs, 5 walks, 8 Ks, and a homer. Nick Samillo hit his third home run since joining Altoona from Greensboro. And on Saturday, I think the most positive news in this organization, at least down in the minors, Anthony Solometo. 6 innings, 3 hits, no earned runs, 1 walk, 6 Ks. Man, that's by far his best outing of the year. By far. I mean, this has been a very tough season for Solometo. I mean, he got one of those guys that got really sick in spring training and just got off to a really slow start. And I think he's just finally ramping up, and a guy that we might see in the fall league. I don't know who we'll see in Arizona Fall League, but he seems like a prime candidate. We'll see. 5.47 ERA on the season. That is it for Altoona. We're going to go to Greensboro, where they were on the road in Rome, Georgia, facing the Rome Emperors of the Braves Single A affiliate. Mitch Jebb just this week went 5 for 23, 3 runs scored, a double, 2 triples, 7 Ks, and 4 stolen bases. He's got 40 plus stolen bases on the year. He's hitting 255 too. He got off to such a slow start. He's a guy I've definitely got my eye on going forward. Wednesday, Alessandro Orcolani, 4 innings pitched, 1 hit, no earned runs, 4 Ks. Deuce Gorson joined Greensboro as well. He was a draft pick out of, I believe, 7th or 8th round pick out of UCLA. Already got called up from Bradenton, went 2 for 5 with a double and an RBI. Thursday, Carlson Reed, the WVU product. I just learned today that he was actually a receiver on WVU's football team. I don't know if that was just for a year or what, but he went 6 innings, no hits, 1 earned, 2 walks, 6 Ks. So 6 innings of no-hit ball. He's been absolutely stellar since joining Greensboro. 0.73 ERA. Mitch Jebb went 2 for 5 with a triple, his 6th on the year. A stolen base, his 40th. I mean, Mitch Jebb could be a top-of-the-order juggernaut. He's a guy that seems to always be running, and he's got a lot of triples, extra base hits. I don't know about the raw power, but seems like your prototypical leadoff hitter. Friday, Sean Ross went 3 for 5 with a triple and 3 RBIs. He's at 196 on the year. And Saturday, Derek Diamond, 5 innings, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 4 walks, 2 Ks, 4.66 ERA, the SEC product out of Ole Miss. Sunday, Michael Kennedy made his Greensboro debut, 5 innings, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 5 Ks. Pretty good outing for Michael Kennedy. He's another arm that we're pretty high on in this organization. Let's go to Bradenton. Tough week for the Marauders. They were in home versus the Tampa Tarpons, the Yankees, a low A affiliate. Johnny Severino went 6 for 23, 2 runs, 4 RBIs, 2 doubles, a triple, a home run, and 9 Ks. He's a guy that, since being called up to Bradenton, has really raised some eyebrows. He was acquired last year in the Carlos Santana trade at the deadline. Tuesday, Xander Muth, 5 innings, 1 hit, no earned runs, 2 walks, 3 Ks, got a 4.02 ERA. I think the walks are a concern, but he's still young. He's a high school arm. He kind of gives me, I've mentioned this plenty of times before, like Tanner Houck vibes. He's got that funky, like side arm, low 3/4 slot, generates a lot of run on the ball. He's got another arm in this organization, full of arms. Christian Curtis came in relief, 4 innings pitched, 4 hits, no earned runs, 4 Ks. And Johnny Severino hit for the cycle at 19 years old. Went 4 for 4, 2 runs scored, 4 RBIs, a double, a triple, and a home run. His 3rd on the year. Pretty cool to see that from Mr. Severino. Thursday, and forgive me for mispronouncing this name, but we definitely got to learn how to say this one. Connor Whitgreaf. I definitely said that wrong, but he was a draft pick just a month ago, almost 2 months ago. He's looked pretty solid since joining the Bradenton Marauders. 3 innings pitch, 1 hit, no earned runs, 3 Ks. He's got a 1.13 ERA. As Merlin Valdez went 1 for 2 with his 19th homer of the year, 1 RBI, 3 walks. Friday, Shailene Polanco hit his 11th. He's still only hitting 184. Tough season in Bradenton for Polanco, but he's definitely got the raw power and speed combo. Sunday, Christian Curtis went 3 innings, 2 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, and 2 Ks. Our guy, Christian Curtis, he got a 4.16 ERA on the year. And Will Taylor, the draft pick out of Clemson, went 3 for 5 with his 2nd home run. an RBI, and his second stolen base on the season. That is it for our minor league recap. Before we close out and go to our preview of the Cup Series, got to give out our minor league player of the week. There's a couple of names that are deserving, in my opinion. I definitely thought about giving it to Anthony Solomedo. I got to go with Johnny Severino. 19 years old, hitting for the cycle. He went 6 for 23 this week with 2 doubles, a triple, and a home run, 4 RBIs, but hitting for the cycle at 19 in affiliated ball. Pretty impressive. So shout out Johnny Severino. I believe this is his second Bucco Bantr minor league player of the week. Definitely a name that we're watching here, especially next year. I expect to see him in Bradenton, Greensboro next year. And he's a promising prospect in his organization. He's going to be shooting up lists here soon. Let's move on to our Cubs preview. After this series in Cleveland, the team is traveling to Wrigleyville to face the Cubs again. The Cubs were just here at PNC, swept the Pirates. It was an ugly series. They gave up 40-plus runs. It was ugly, 40-plus hits. It was a series to forget. Let's put it that way. And the Cubs are a little bit on a heater. They were in last in the NL Central for a good portion of the summer. I don't know about a good portion, but for a bit. And now they're in second. They're 71-66, 5 games above 500. They're getting hot when it matters. They're second in the division. They're 9 games behind Milwaukee. Milwaukee's got a nice little lead here in the Central. And they're 3.5 games out of the wild card. So definitely in contention here. Definitely got to stay hot to stay in contention. And we got some big pitching matchups here this week. We're seeing 2 guys we saw last week. And we'll start with Monday. Monday, Jameson Taillon faces the Pirates again, and this time it's versus Jared Jones. We faced Taillon last week. He went 6 2/3, gave up 8 hits, 4 earned runs, no walks, 3 Ks, gave up a homer to Ryan Reynolds. In May, he also faced the Pirates, went 4 2/3, 6 hits, 3 earned runs, 2 walks, 4 Ks, and gave up a homer to Jack Sawinski. He's 9-8 on the year, 3.85 ERA in 23 games started, 104 Ks. He's just been a very solid big league arm this year. He's been a bright spot for the Cubs. He has that 4-seam that he throws 30% of the time, averages around 92. He's got a cutter. He throws 24% of the time, averages around 87. His sweepers around 81. He throws it 16% of the time. Also with a curve around 80 miles an hour, he throws 16% of the time. Then he's got a sinker and a change that he mixes in. He'll throw the kitchen sink at you. He's got 3 different types of fastballs. He's got a 4-seam, he's got a sinker, and he's got a cutter. But with that said, he doesn't generate a ton of whiff. He limits walks. He's going to throw a lot of strikes. He's going to pitch to contact more than anything. And we saw that last week. I mean, we got eight hits off of him. We're familiar with Jameson Taillon. I mean, this was a number 2 overall pick with the Pirates. We get to see him again. Second time in a week. Hopefully this time ends up even better than last time. I think they had a solid outing. He went 6 2/3, but he gave up 8 hits and 4 earned runs. Didn't walk anybody and only struck out 3. And you know how the Pirates love to strike out. So Jameson Taillon is who we face tomorrow. And then we've got Justin Steele on Tuesday versus Paul Skeens. Again, is that the second time that Steele and Skeens have faced each other? Second or third? I know Skeens' debut, he faced off against Justin Steele, but we've had Justin Steele's number. And we talked about this last week on last weekend's episode. He's 5-5 with a 3.09 ERA this year in 22 games started, 131 Ks. He has 3 starts against the Pirates, 2 in May. He went 4 innings pitched in the first one, 6 hits, 6 earned runs, 2 walks, 3 Ks, 3 homers. Those 3 homers were Connor Joe, O'Neill Cruz, and Michael A. Taylor. And then the next week at Wrigley, he went 5 2/3, 6 hits, 4 earned runs, 1 walk, 7 Ks, and gave up 2 homers to Ollie and Nikki G. And then just last week had a better outing against the Pirates than in May. He's went 5 innings pitched, 6 hits, 2 earned runs, 2 walks, 6 Ks. Justin Steele has definitely gotten better as the season's gone on. He's been one of the better pitchers in the league this last month. But that being said, I feel like the Pirates have had his number in a way. They seem to get some hard contact off of him, and they have 5 homers off him. And I know they all came in May, but still, if you can jump on the fastball, I think you're going to expose him. He's a 2-pitch guy, mostly fastball, slider. We saw that. He has a fourth seam that sits around 92. He throws it 60% of the time. That's a lot for a starter. And he's got a slider that he throws 30% of the time. Then he mixes in a sinker, a change, and a curve, but all those he throws less than 5% of the time. He's a fastball slider guy. 90% of his pitches are fastball slider. So most guys that only throw 2 pitches don't go through the order more than a couple times, more than twice. But still really figures out a way to use his fastball to the best of his ability. He figures out how it's most effective. He limits hard hits. He limits barrels. He generates more whiffs than his velo suggests. I mean, his fastball plays up. He hides the ball well. He has a quick arm motion with potential for plus life with a little bit of sink and run. And as we know, his secondary pitches lie behind his fastball other than his slider. So jump on the fastball and you kind of limit him pretty easily. And I don't want to say it's easy because it's not. He's been one of the better pitchers in the National League these last 2 years. But let's see if the Pirates can continue their good luck against him. Lastly, we got Wednesday. No name starter for the Pirates just yet, but for the Cubs, it's going to be Shota Imanaga. Shota Imanaga was an international signee by the Cubs this offseason. He's been great, to say the least. 11-3 with a 3.14 ERA and 25 games started, 148 Ks. He had one start against the Pirates in May. He went 7 innings, 4 hits, no runs, 1 walk, 7 Ks. I mean, I think he went like his first month without giving up a run. He was on this unbelievable stretch. He throws a little bit of everything too. 4-seam 53% of the time, 92 miles an hour. Again, none of these guys are going to blow you away. None of them. None of these guys I would call power pitchers. They're more kitchen sink guys, except for Justin Steele. He throws a splitty. This is his signature pitch. He throws it 30% of the time. It averages around 83 miles an hour. He throws a sweeper about 7% of the time, also low 80s, a curve in the low 70s, around 3% of the time, and then a change and a sinker below 3% of the time. He's a crafty lefty, okay? He's just like Justin Steele in a way, but throws a few more pitches than a fastball slider. He's a crafty lefty with good feel for pitching. His fastball, like we said, sits between 89 and 93 with solid riding life. He touches 94 to 95 in short bursts. But again, he's going to sit in the low 90s, and his main secondary is a splitty. It has late cut, and it generates ground balls. We saw what the Pirates did today against a guy that generates a ton of ground balls, man. They just beat everything into the ground. And, yeah, I mean, this is a bad matchup for the Pirates. As we saw in May, Shota Imanaga is one of the better offseason signings, especially internationally. And, hopefully they get a couple, get off to a good start to series against Tyone and Steele, as I think they could. But none of these guys are power pitchers. Like I said, they should be able to jump on the fastballs. It's just about limiting damage elsewhere, right? Not letting these guys get comfortable with their secondary stuff, and don't let them use their strengths against you. And you could say that in any matchup, actually. But that is it for the Cubs scouting report. Those are the matchups that we face this week. Let's go into players of the week before we end off this episode. We have our hitter and pitcher of the week that we have to name. There's a couple hitters this week, believe it or not. Although we only had one win, there are a few hitters that were deserving this week. I really like Brian Reynolds' week. I really like Rowdy Tellez's week. But O'Neal Cruz went 11 for 26. Scored 4 runs, 2 doubles, 5 RBIs, 3 stolen bases. Like I said, he's been one of the best hitters in the month of August. He's hitting like 389, I believe. This week he hit 423, and he stayed hot all while moving positions. So our long-term center fielder, O'Neal Cruz, is the hitter of the week. And that brings us to the pitcher of the week. That is Luis Ortiz. There was not a lot to pick from here, unlike the position player side. A lot of pitchers to pick from. We could have gone Paul Skeens, but Luis Ortiz, our only win this week was in Cleveland, 3-0 win where he went 6 innings, only gave up a hit, no earned runs, 5 Ks. Luis Ortiz has been one of our constants in the rotation this year. And, hopefully we can get a couple more wins here in Chicago this week. And then we got the Nationals at the end of the week coming to PNC Park. That is it for Bucco Bantr today, folks. As always, check us out on Twitter at Bucco Bantr Pod, and then Instagram, TikTok, everywhere else. Threads, we're at Bucco Bantr, Banner without an E, Bantr. Check out our shop, buccobantr.com. Awesome merch. We got some Let's Get Rowdy t-shirts, Nikki G, Nikki Knox, Nikki Barrows t-shirt. We got the Jared Jones and Natasha Bedingfield collab. We've got the Paul Skeens, Livy Dunn's boyfriend shirt. So many options. We also got our classic Bucco Bantr merch. Go get yours now. We'll probably run some sales here at the end of the season, so keep posted to our social media. But until then, guys, let's raise it.
Rockin' 101, she compliment my taste. Whiskey in my lemonade, cause I like the way it tastes. Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates. Order steak by the plates, and in case after case, run my race at my pace. Clear the grass of the snake.